Hello and welcome to this second first look exploring session looking at Love's Metamorphosis by John Lyly. We had a roller coaster session last time. It was the beginning of the first scene was all, we know where we are. This is they're in love. They're being spurned. Nymph murdered. What? Hang on. And then it took us on all sorts of different directions. And the real question that we've got here is, how is Lyly going to resolve these issues? Is it going to be a way that we're going to embrace and go, yay? Or is it going to be one where we go, ee? So let's see, along the borderline between yay and ee, this play goes. To discover that as we go from Act 4, Scene 2 to the end of the play, we have reading Montanus again, and finally getting to be a siren is...
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm an actor currently based in Germany.
Reading possibly Tirtena today, but almost certainly Petulius is...
Me, Aliki. I'm an actor and translator who really should be translating right now.
Well, things happen. Reading Silvestris today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I have not murdered any nymphs yet.
No, but talking to someone who has murdered a nymph, reading Eriscthon, the name no one can ever remember how to pronounce, and Celia is...
Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm a teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
Yes, let's be clear. Lynn has not murdered a nymph. The character that Lynn is reading murdered. I mean, as far as I know, I don't know what Lynn gets up to in her spare time. Reading Protea is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake, and frankly, I'm still sad that I don't have a ukulele.
Yes, not everyone can have a ukulele, but well, you could. They're not that expensive. Reading Niobe today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Nisa and Ramis today is...
Liza Graham, actor, singer, other stuff, London.
And reading Cupid today is...
Lois Potter, retired academic, living in London.
And reading Ceres today, who we haven't seen for a little while, is...
Hello, Helen Good, historian, Hull.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and any part that I've forgotten to hand out. We are diving into Act 4, Scene 2. We have, as a script that isn't exactly abundant with stage directions. Occasionally we may need to infer some as we go. As far as we know at this point, we have the entry of Eriscthon and Protea.
Come, Protea, tell me, how didst thou escape from the merchant?
Neptune, that great god, when I was ready to go with the merchant into the ship, turned me into a fisherman on the shore, with an angle in my hand and on my shoulder a net. The merchant, missing me and yet finding me, asked me who I was and whether I saw not a fair maiden. I answered no. He, marvelling and raging, was forced either to lose his passage or seek for me among the pebbles. To make short, a good wind caused him to go I know not whither, and me, thanks be to Neptune, to return home.
Thou art happy, Protea, though thy father be miserable, and Neptune gracious, though Ceres be cruel. Thy escape from the merchant breedeth in me life, joy, fullness.
My father cannot be miserable if Protea be happy. For by selling me every day, he shall never want meat, nor I shifts to escape. And now, father, give me leave to enjoy my Petulius, that on this unfortunate shore still seeks me, sorrowing.
Seek him, dear Protea, find and enjoy him, and live here ever hereafter to thine own comforts, that hast hitherto been the preserver of mine.
And exit Eriscthon.
Ay me! Behold, a siren haunts this shore. The gods forbid she should entangle my Petulius.
Yes, a siren appears.
Accursed men! whose loves have no other mean than extremities, nor hate's end but mischief.
Unnatural monster, no maid, that accuseth men whose hearts are removed by courtesy. I will hear the depth of her malice.
Of all creatures most unkind, most cunning, by whose subtleties I am half fish, half flesh, themselves being neither fish nor flesh, in love lukewarm, in cruelty red hot. If they praise, they flatter. If flatter, deceive. If deceive, destroy.
She rails at men, but seeks to entangle them. This sleight is prepared for my sweet Petulius. I will withdraw myself close, for Petulius followeth. He will without doubt be enamoured of her. Enchanted he shall not be. My charms shall countervail hers. It is he hath saved my father's life with money, and must prolong mine with love.
I marvel Protea is so far before me. If she run off fly, sweet Protea, where art thou? It is Petulius calleth. Protea!
Here cometh a brave youth. Now, Siren, leave out nothing that may allure. Thy golden locks, thy enticing looks, thy tuned voice, thy subtle speech, thy fair promises,
Siren.
which never missed the heart of any but Ulysses.
Sings with a glass in her hand and a comb.
What divine goddess is this? What sweet harmony! My heart is ravished with such tickling thoughts, and mine eyes stayed with such a bewitching beauty that I can neither find the means to remove my affection nor turn aside my looks.
And sing again,
I
Siren.
yield to death, but with such delight that I would not wish to live unless it were to hear thy sweet lays.
Live still, so thou love me. Why standest thou amazed at the word love?
It is high time to prevent this mischief. Now, Neptune, stand to thy promise, and let me take suddenly the shape of an old man, so shall I mar what she makes.
Not yet come to myself, or if I be, I dare not credit my ears. Love thee, divine goddess. Vouchsafe I may honor thee and live by the imagination I have of thy words and worthiness.
I am a goddess, but a lady and a virgin, whose love if thou embrace, thou shalt live no less happy than the gods in heaven.
Believe not this enchantress, sweet youth, who retaineth the face of a virgin, but the heart of a fiend, whose sweet tongue sheddeth more drops of blood than it uttereth syllables.
Out, dottrel, whose dim eyes cannot discern beauty, nor doting age judge of love.
If thou listen to her words, thou shalt not live to repent, for her malice is as sudden as her joys are sweet.
Thy silver hairs are not so precious as her golden locks, nor thy crooked age of that estimation as her flowering youth.
That old man measureth the hot assault of love with the cold skirmishes of age.
That young cruel resembleth old apes who kill by culling. From the top of this rock whereon she sitteth will she throw thee headlong into the sea, whose song is the instrument of her witchcraft, never smiling but when she meaneth to smite, and under the flattery of love practice the shedding of blood.
What art thou which so blasphemest this divine creature?
I am the ghost of Ulysses, who continually hover about these places where this Siren haunteth, to save those which otherwise should be spoiled. Stop thine ears, as I did mine, and succour the fair, but by thy folly the most infortunate Protea.
Protea? What dost thou here, Petulius? Where is Protea?
In this thicket. ready to hang herself because thou carest not for her that did swear to follow. Curse this hag, who only hath the voice and face of a virgin, the rest all fish and feathers and filth. Follow me, and strongly stop thine ears, lest the second encounter make the wound incurable.
Is this a siren? And thou, Ulysses? Cursed be that hellish carcass, and blessed be thy heavenly spirit.
I shrink my head for shame. O Ulysses, is it not enough for thee to escape, but also to teach others? Sing and die, nay, die, and never sing more.
Follow me at this door and out at the other.
How am I delivered? Oh, the old man has vanished. And here for him stands Protea.
Here standeth Protea, that hath saved thy life. Thou must also prolong hers. But let us into the woods, and there I will tell thee how I came to Ulysses, and the sum of all my fortunes, which happily will breed in thee both love and wonder.
I will, and only love Protea, and never cease to wonder at Protea.
Exuent. So, for those at the beginning of this scene who are going, oh, look, it's a scene with Protea and her father, the father who sold her for money. What's going to happen in this scene? Who thought it was going to go down this route? Sarah.
Who is Petulius? They're talking as if they've been in love forever, and he's been sitting on a shore waiting for her, and it's I've never heard of this man. I don't know who he is.
To be fair, you've only met Protea once.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, she didn't mention him
then. In terms
of
her on-stage life story, this is actually quite well expanded upon.
Yeah. He's just some random dude. You think he would have just had a mention in the previous scene, a name check at least. I'm who is this that I'm in love with? I have no idea. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah, no, it is a good point. It would be nice if we vaguely got some grumbling from the father at the very beginning of the play, just to vaguely set it up, because that might have been quite nice. I also quite what disappointed me about when the father exits here is that he doesn't turn around and say, hey, we could run this trick so many times. I could sell you and Neptune will come in. We could coin it.
She says it.
Especially since she says it.
Yeah. But why does he not take her up on this?
I think they've agreed that is what they'll do.
Yeah, because that is the legend, the original story of the guy whose name is unpronounceable and his daughter who has a different name, is that's what they do.
But no, she just wants to get married. So it's slightly disappointing. From my point of view, anyway, because I just want that to be the play. Random horrible dude ends up in the sea. Just get in the sea, one after another. Neptune, go Neptune. Just like to say, really, really turns up. He's very present. Lois, Eric, then Sarah.
Well, it's interesting that she doesn't explain to Petulius that their marriage is going to be slightly unusual and that she's going to be sold every day to a different man, and she's already had an affair with Neptune. I don't know if he knows any of this.
I was just gonna say, does he know that she already has a boyfriend who happens to be a god?
It's an open relationship. Eric.
I was just gonna say that you were talking about name checks and stuff. Well, at the beginning, we don't even know that Eriscthon has a daughter. We only learn that because he gets hungry and has to sell her for money and food.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, go Protea as well. I mean, what I was going to say, Lois and Tamara have already kind of said, but I love the fact that usually when Neptune seduces a woman, either a nymph or a mortal woman, that is the end of her life, if not her certainly her reputation. And here, not only is she sort of using her previous encounter with Neptune to kind of develop some agency and escape from, you know, these horrible patriarchal snares she keeps being placed in, but also she's then like, oh, I can actually use this. We can game this slightly to, like, you know, help my father out. And then also she's like, oh yeah, and in between that, is it okay if I just go and, you know, love Petulius because, you know, he's the guy I'm actually into? And there's just no sense of shame or kind of the usual sort of patriarchal norms and sort of moral conventions coming into this. She's just like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm able to do. So that's what I'm just going to go and do, kind of thing. And I love that. And that's kind of rare, you know. There's usually at least some sort of scene of, you know, the girl being like, oh my God, I have lost my virginity, or the father saying, oh, you have lost your virginity, you know, or something along those lines. And here she's just like, yeah.
I'm waiting for the day when Neptune goes, you know what, I'm not going to return your calls anymore because, you know, this is getting a bit much.
That is a bit of a risk, but this is what I love about Lyly. His female characters have such agency, not always, but quite often, and that's what we're seeing here again.
And then we meet a Siren.
My favorite entrance in ages, honestly. I hate men. I just hate them.
Yeah, always having to sing at them. It's, you know, it's awful.
Everything is their fault.
Yeah, and then we've got what's clearly some sort of interesting transformation trick going on as well with Protea. You know, she just has sort of walked through a door and magically she has changed. So I'm really interested in how that quick change functions. What's going on with that? You know, I've seen some very good quick changes in my time, so I'm really interested in the mechanics of that.
Or would you actually just have two actors?
That is true. That's a much better way of doing it.
But I want to sort of re-echo and agree with Sarah's comment that it's that this really is kind of an unusual take on mortal woman sexually assaulted by an Olympian god. I mean, it very rarely works out well for Jupiter's paramours. You know, Semele goes up in a puff of smoke, and I guess Hercules' mother doesn't fare too badly, but like no good ever comes of these encounters between gods and mortals. And she's just like, well, that was a fun little affair. I'm going to use it as leverage to get out of a scrape in my life, and cool. Yeah. And the fact that she's still romantically available after having had an affair, that's like really unusual.
Yeah.
She's not a virgin anymore, but she's still an ingenue.
Other thoughts about this? It's not a desperately long scene, but it packs an awful lot of material in. Any other thoughts before we move into Act 5? So we've gone. It's just to flag up the contrast between where we left off yesterday. We left off with a group of incels being utter gits, and then suddenly we leap to this. I mean, these are such contrasting scenes, and it's such a different universe that's being portrayed here. Or it's the same universe, but it comes out in different ways. So it's really fascinating as a mix of scenes, one after another. Okay, I'm not saying any more, so we'll go into Act 5, Scene 1, and here we have Ceres and Cupid, and maybe just standing in the background, Tirtena may say something I don't see immediately.
Cupid, thou hast transformed my nymphs and incensed me. To them shapes unreasonable, to me anger immortal. For at one time I am both robbed of mine honour and my nymphs.
Ceres, thy nymphs were stubborn, and thyself speaking so imperiously to Cupid, somewhat stately. If you ask the cause in choler, sic volo sic jubeo. If in courtesy, quae venit ex merito poena dolenda venit. They were disdainful and have their deserts. Thou, Ceres, dost but govern the guts of men, I the hearts. Thou seekest to starve Eriscthon with thy ministered famine, whom his daughter shall preserve by my virtue, love.
Thou art but a god, Cupid.
No, Ceres, but such a god that maketh thunder fall out of Jove's hand by throwing thoughts into his heart, and to be more terrified with the sparkling of a lady's eye than men with the flashes of his lightning. Such a god that hath kindled more fire in Neptune's bosom than the whole sea which he is king of can quench. Such power have I, that Pluto's never dying fire does but scorch in respect of my flames. Diana hath felt some motions of love, Vesta doth, Ceres shall.
Art thou so cruel?
To those that resist, a lion, to those that submit, a lamb.
Canst thou make such difference in affection? And yet it shall all be love.
Yea, as much as between sickness and health, though in both be life. Those that yield and honor Cupid shall possess sweet thoughts and enjoy pleasing wishes. The other shall be tormented with vain imaginations and impossible hopes.
How may my nymphs be restored?
If thou restore Eriscthon, they embrace their loves, and all offer sacrifice to me.
Eriscthon did in contempt hew down my sacred tree.
Thy nymphs did in disdain scorn my constant love.
He slew most cruelly my chaste Fidelia, whose blood lieth yet on the ground.
But Diana hath changed her blood to fresh flowers, which are to be seen on the ground.
What honour shall he do to Ceres? What amends can he make to Fidelia?
All Ceres' grove shall he deck with garlands, and accompt every tree holy. A stately monument shall he erect in remembrance of Fidelia, and offer yearly sacrifice.
What sacrifice shall I and my nymphs offer thee? For I will do anything to restore my nymphs and honour thee.
You shall present, in honor of my mother Venus, grapes and wheat, for sine serere et Baccho friget Venus. You shall suffer your nymphs to play, sometimes to be idle, in the favor of Cupid. For otia sitolis periere Cupidinis arcus. So much for Ceres. Thy nymphs shall make no vows to continue virgins, nor use words to disgrace love, nor fly from opportunities that kindle affections. If they be chaste, let them not be cruel. If fair, not proud. If loving, not inconstant. Cruelty is for tigers, pride for peacocks, inconstancy for fools.
Cupid, I yield, and they shall. But sweet Cupid, let them not be deceived by flattery, which taketh the shape of affection, nor by lust, which is clothed in the habit of love. For men have as many sleights to delude as they have words to speak.
Those that practice deceit shall perish. Cupid favoreth none but the faithful.
Well, I will go to Eriscthon and bring him before thee.
Then shall thy nymphs recover their forms, so as they yield to love.
They shall.
And the conference between these two mythical creatures has been concluded there. An accord has been agreed between Ceres and Cupid. The official signing will follow at the point of reconciliation. There's an interesting image that's this brings out, which I'm wondering if is stageable as well, when they're talking about the blood life on the ground, but Diana have changed her blood to fresh flowers.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's something that could be done. As this is a play that seems to be full of potential effects, and that's sort of making me quite interested in what can be done with that. The visuals that are living in the dialogue and their potential for actualization, as it were. So Ceres not very happy about what's happened to her nymphs, as it were. Again, this reference to sort of semi-off-stage action, in a sense, we haven't seen the nymphs, what Cupid did to the nymphs, in the same way as the previous scene. We hadn't seen what happened with Protea and the merchant. So there's, as ever with Lyly, that sort of sense that some action is occurring elsewhere, but we're focusing on this. Thoughts from the room, Eric?
This is basically blackmail, isn't it? It's like, yeah, if you do this, I'll do this for you, and if you don't do this, they just stay like that. That's it's basically a status quo. If they don't agree.
That's diplomacy. Other thoughts?
I feel
Lynn.
Ceres is. Oh,
Go ahead.
I feel Ceres is losing out.
Well,
Yeah, Ceres is in the weaker bargaining position here
Yeah, I was expecting her to have something up her sleeve, and she didn't.
Cupid's done the thing to the nymphs, and therefore it has the position. You want this to change? Well, what are you going to give me?
I mean,
Lynn.
Cupid does say that the greatest Olympian gods are in my power. So, I mean, that's sort of in this universe. Yeah, love is the sort of overriding force. I wanted to just make a microscopic observation that whatever other kinds of challenges you have with a Lyly script, there are really these local effects of the prose that I cannot help but find absolutely lovely. I guess maybe that's the writing teacher in me, that I love a good sentence. And this speech of Cupid where he's talking about the nymphs, if they be chaste, let them not be cruel. If fair, not proud. If loving, not inconstant. Cruelty is for tigers, pride for peacocks, and inconstancy for fools. Just the structure of that. It's so beautifully put together. It's the architecture. It's so beautifully balanced that I have a hard time just not being completely charmed by that.
Yes, and what I really like about this text is that those sort of effects are laid on a bit thick in some of his earlier plays. They're sort of never ending, whereas here they are balanced much more among scenes and used much more sparingly, and all the more effective because of it. Actually, I absolutely, yes, second that wholeheartedly. Other thoughts? Lois, then Eric, then Aliki.
I just see that Aliki's asking, what was that Latin bit about Bacchus? That's a saying that comes up quite often, sine cere et Bacchus frigit Venus, the idea that you're not going to have any love without food and drink. I mean, that's there's a whole speech in The Revenger's Tragedy, which I think is based on that idea.
Oh, excellent. When we get to that, we will endeavor to remember that this point has been made. Eric.
I was going to say that it's interesting how Cupid is kind of talking about how the nymphs have basically scorned him, or scorning his constant love and so on and so forth. But then, like, Ceres has had a much bigger problem, because, like, if you think about it, like in terms of power, because her sacred tree has been defiled. Basically, it's been cut down and broken into pieces, and the nymph in it has died, as we know. But like, still, she's supposed to play like basically second fiddle to this kid / Cupid, which is quite an interesting sort of dynamic in terms of hierarchy.
Yes, and that distinction, because of what Cupid looks like as opposed to what Cupid is. I mean, that distinction is played really nicely in some other plays as well. Aliki.
On much the same point, I love her line to Cupid, "Thou art only a god," is we're used to hearing, "You're only human, you're only a man," but no, you're only a god. Lovely.
Yes. Other thoughts from the room or other questions that we want to note or mark? No. Okay. So yes, we've had a break, as it say, from Protea and Petulius, which gives us all the more appetite for more Petulius and Protea as we go into Act 5, Scene 2, featuring those two people.
A strange discourse, Protea, by which I find the gods amorous, and virgins immortal, goddesses full of cruelty, and men of unhappiness.
I have told both my father's misfortunes, grown by stoutness, and mine by weakness, his thwarting of Ceres, my yielding to Neptune.
I know, Protea, that hard iron falling into fire waxeth soft, and then the tender heart of a virgin being in love must needs melt. For what should a fair, young, and witty lady answer to the sweet enticements of love but "Mole meum levibus cor est violabili telis"?
I have heard too that hearts of men, stiffer than steel, have by love been made softer than wool. And then they cry, "Omnia vincit amor, et nos cedamus amori."
Men have often feigned sighs.
And women forged tears.
Suppose I love not.
Suppose I care not.
If men swear, and he, how will you try their loves?
If women swear they love, how will you try their dissembling?
The gods put wit into women.
And nature deceit into men.
I did this but to try your patience.
Nor I, but to prove your faith. But see, Petulius, what miraculous punishments here are for deserts in love. This rock was a nymph to Ceres. So was this rose, so that bird.
All changed from their shapes.
All changed by Cupid, because they disdained love, or dissembled in it.
A fair warning to Protea, I hope she will love without dissembling.
An item for Petulius, that he delude not those that love him. For Cupid can also change men. Let us in.
What an interesting little scene. It's sort of quite playful, and apart from the fact they're walking past three people who have been horribly punished, it's quite lovely. It's like, let's go for a little stroll down the paths of terror. Oh, isn't the weather lovely? Yeah. So yeah, thoughts on this little saunter, this little ambulation, Lois.
Yeah, just technically, I'm wondering how those three things got there, since they obviously couldn't have been there before the women were changed, and there's no reference to them. Could they have been on stage all the time and just revealed at this point?
Yeah, it feels like the mechanics of this play requires some sort of concealment area that can be revealed, or some sort of stage business that can get things on and off. Because the question of what's happening with the tree, what happened to the tree earlier, and also elements like this, and so yeah, this is a play that seems to be asking a lot technically. But it's a really good question. At what point are they revealed? Have they been on stage since after the Cupid scene? A while ago. Was it during the act break? If there was a musical act break to reset the stage for Act 5, which is possible if music was played. And musicians keep playing until we vamp. We haven't got the statues on yet. Aliki, then Helen.
It's a nice little break from the war of the sexes, because every other male-female scene we've had has been quite combative, except with Protea and her father. And that this is the disputation as flirtation it's nice.
Mm. Yeah. Helen, then Sarah.
If the scene is reset in the act break, then 5-1, which is Ceres and Cupid, is the first scene after that. And Ceres is complaining about her nymphs having been transformed, and this is much more effective if those transformations are on stage.
Yeah, because then she's just standing there going, look, this. Yeah, absolutely. Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just how much I continue to be impressed with the characterization of Protea, really. She's so great. I'm struggling to think of a female character in a text that we've read that has more agency, really. And the other thing I really like about this scene is I was wobbling on a lot yesterday about the structure of the play and how clever it was, and I think this is another example of that, because Protea's only been in 2 scenes so far, and a lot has happened in both of those scenes that we weren't expecting to happen. And then Petulius has only been in 1 scene, and it's like he came out of nowhere. And so, both of these characters have been involved in a lot of action, and then all of a sudden they're brought together in this really quiet little scene, which is just all characterization. There's no action whatsoever. We've had that in their previous 2 scenes, and now we get to actually unfold their characters and see who they are and see who they are in relation to each other. And again, I just think that's such a clever thing that Lyly's done. He doesn't do it in the usual way. He doesn't develop the character and then throw them into action. He throws them and the audience with them into the action, and then he develops the character, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's lovely. We've got a scene that is actually structurally doesn't seem to actually serve any plot function at all. I mean, you don't need this scene. I would never cut it. It's fab. But it's, and I've been quite critical of some of Lyly's structuring of his plays. I've had some issues. But this one is just working like clockwork in many ways. I mean, there are bits where I'm going, well, maybe we could add this, maybe we could add that. But for what he's trying to do, he's doing it very, very effectively. Liza.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that as an opera person, this scene is basically a duet. Opera in this period, the story moves during the recits. And there's no recit in this scene. It's just them coming on, and essentially it's a lyrical duet. And Lord, Lyly's prose is just lovely. It dances. It's so light-footed. He's, as you say, he's got over a lot of his overly elaborate stylization here, and it's just lovely writing.
Eric, then Helen.
I'm gonna be the pessimist in the room and just go, well, at the end of the scene there is that thing of like, we've had this flirtation, but then a fair warning to Protea, and then an item for Petulius, like, don't forget, this is what can happen if you're not faithful, if you're not constant. Sort of an underlying tension there, I guess.
Helen.
Yes, going back to what Liza was saying, this is a new Lyly. It's a different Lyly. We haven't had one of those mind-blowingly difficult, incredibly long speeches. I mean, even Ceres at the beginning had a beginning of her part had an awful lot of text, but it was broken up by people asking questions and making suggestions. And it really is quite a relief that it isn't so early Lyly.
Yeah, I mean, the closest we've got is Fidelia at the very beginning, but that is such an exception within the text. There's no expectation that Fidelia is going to do another long speech.
She's been chopped up into tiny pieces.
Yeah, I think we can allow her room for expanse.
All
Other
over
thoughts?
the stage.
Other thoughts before we move on? We have a very short scene to do next, which I'm sure will be in total contrast with this delightful scene. Maybe it won't be. Maybe it will be very similar. Act 5, Scene 3, Ramis, Silvestris, and Montanus.
This goeth luckily that Cupid hath promised to restore our mistresses, and Ceres that they shall accept our loves.
I did ever imagine that true love would end with sweet joys, though it was begun with deep sighs.
But how shall we look on them when we first shall see them smile? We must, and perchance they will frown.
Tush! Let us endure the bending of their fair brows and the scorching of their sparkling eyes, so that we may possess at last the depth of their affections.
Possess? Never doubt it, for Ceres hath restored Eriscthon, and therefore will persuade with them, nay, command them.
If it come by commandment of Ceres, not their own motions, I rather they should hate. For what joy can there be in our lives, or in our love's sweetness, when every kiss shall be sealed with a curse, and every kind word proceed of fear, not affection? Enforcement is worse than enchantment.
Art thou so superstitious in love that was wont to be most careless? Let them curse all day, so I may have but one kiss at night.
Thou art worse than Silvestris, he not content without absolute love, thou with indifferent.
But here cometh Ceres with Eriscthon. Let us look demurely, for in her heart she hates us deeply.
And we're just going to pause there before we get into the action of the very close of the play. So we've got the three chaps having a little conflab. Thoughts in the room on that before we move on? Tamara?
Did Silvestris just grow half a brain cell?
There does seem to have been some development of thought here.
Yeah, Ramis is a douchebag.
Well, in terms of the level of douchery available in this scene, it's sometimes difficult to decide which of them we want to award more to. Eric?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was just interesting, sort of the whole concept of love. It might there might be true love there, but there's also a sort of public nature of love kind of thing going on. So everyone decides to get together, or everyone decides to sort of it's not necessarily by their will or by their volition.
Other thoughts? No. Okay, we're going to go into the final scene. There is a bit of a clash with Liza talking to herself at least one point.
I'm in love with myself.
Well, I didn't want to say anything. It's...
Hey, I live alone. You do what you can.
But it's one of those scenes where I can't seem to really untangle it any further. So just take a deep breath, change your voice slightly, and go for it. It comes a little later on. There are two relatively long speeches where they talk directly to each other.
You don't want to be my Nisa?
I could be if you twist my arm. I don't think anyone else can. I don't think I can make it any of the rest of the parts play. So. Okay, I'll hang on. I'll check. Yeah, okay. I will be like, I don't know which curse they've got. So am I like stone? I don't know. Anyway, Act 5, Scene 4. We'll do it that way. We have lots of people coming on stage in this scene, joining the three people. At this moment, we've got Eriscthon and Ceres, but we're going to have lots of other people joining them. The nymphs are presumably on stage, Petulius, Protea, etc.
I will hallow thy woods with solemn feasts and honor all thy nymphs with due regard.
Well, do so, and thank Cupid that commands. Nay, thank my foolish nymphs that know not how to obey. Here be the lovers ready at receipt. How now, gentlemen, what seek you?
Nothing but what Ceres would find.
Ceres hath found those that I would she had lost. vain lovers.
Ceres may lose that Cupid would save. True lovers.
You think so of one another?
Cupid knoweth so of us all.
You might have made me a counsel of your loves.
Aye, madam, if love would admit counsel.
Cupid, here is Eriscthon in his former state. Restore my nymphs to theirs, then shall they embrace these lovers who wither out their youth.
Honored be mighty Cupid that makes me love.
And me.
What? More lovers yet? I think it be impossible for Ceres to have any follow her in 1 hour that is not in love the next.
Eriscthon, be thou careful to honor Ceres, and forget not to please her nymphs. The faithful love of thy daughter, Protea, hath wrought both pity in me to grant her desires and to release thy punishments. Thou, Petulius, shalt enjoy thy love, because I know thee loyal.
Then shall Petulius be most happy.
And Protea most fortunate.
But do you, Ramis, continue your constant love? And you, Montanus? And you, Silvestris?
Nothing can alter our affections, which increase while the means decrease and wax stronger in being weakened.
Then, Venus, send down that shower wherewith thou wert wont to wash those that do thee worship. And let love by thy beams be honored in all the world, and feared, wished for, and wondered at. Here are thy nymphs, Ceres.
Whom do I see? Nisa!
Divine Celia, fairer than ever she was.
My sweet Niobe.
Why stare you, my nymphs, as amazed? Triumph rather, because you have your shapes. This great god Cupid, that for your prides and follies changed, hath by my prayer and promise restored you.
You see, ladies, what it is to make a mock of love or a scorn of Cupid. See where your lovers stand. You must now take them for your husbands. This is my judgment. This is Ceres' promise.
Happy Ramis!
Happy Montanus.
Happy Silvestris.
Why speak you not, nymphs? This must be done, and you must yield.
Not I.
Not I.
Nor I.
Not yield. Then shall Cupid in his fury turn you again to senseless and shameful shapes.
Will you not yield? How say you, Ramis? Do your loves continue? Are your thoughts constant? And yours, Montanus? And yours, Silvestris?
Mine most unspotted.
And mine.
And mine, Cupid, which nothing can alter.
And will you not yield, virgins?
Not I, Cupid. Neither do I thank thee that I am restored to life, nor fear again to be changed to stone. For rather had I been worn with the continual beating of waves than dulled with the importunities of men, whose open flatteries make way to their secret lusts, retaining as little truth in their hearts as modesty in their words. How happy was Nisa, which felt nothing, pined, yet felt not the consumption. Unfortunate wretch, that now have ears to hear their cunning lies and eyes to behold their dissembling looks. Turn me, Cupid, again, for love I will not.
Miserable Ramis, unhappy to love, to change the lady, accursed, and now lose her, desperate.
Nor I, Cupid. Well would I content myself to bud in summer and to die in the winter. For more good cometh of the rose than can by love. When it is fresh, it hath a sweet savor, love a sour taste. The rose, when it is old, loseth not his virtue. Love, when it is stale, waxeth loathsome. The rose distilled with fire yieldeth sweet water. Love in extremities kindles jealousies. In the rose, however it be, there is sweetness. In love, nothing but bitterness. If men look pale and swear and sigh, then forsooth women must yield, because men say they love, as though our hearts were tied to their tongues, and we must choose them by appointment, ourselves feeling no affection. And so have our thoughts bound prentices to their words. Turn me again, yield I will not.
Which way shalt thou turn thyself, since nothing will turn her heart? Die, Montanus, with shame and grief, and both infinite.
Nor I, Cupid. Let me hang always in the air, which I found more constant than men's words. Happy Niobe, that touch not the ground where they go, but always holding thy beak in the air, didst never turn back to behold the earth. In the heavens I saw an orderly course, in the earth nothing but disorderly love and peevishness. Turn me again, Cupid, for yield I will not.
I would I myself were stone, flower, or fowl, seeing that Niobe had a heart harder than stone, a face fairer than the rose, and a mind lighter than feathers.
What have we here? Hath punishment made you perverse? Ceres, I vow here by my sweet mother Venus, if they yield not, I will turn them again, not to flowers or stones or birds, but to monsters, no less filthy to be seen than to be named hateful. They shall creep that now stand, and be to all men odious, and be to themselves, for the mind they shall retain, loathsome.
My sweet nymphs, for the honour of your sex, for the love of Ceres, for regard of your own country, yield to love, yield, my sweet nymphs, to sweet love.
Shall I yield to him that practised my destruction, and when his love was hottest caused me to be changed to a rock?
Nisa, the extremity of love is madness, and to be mad is to be senseless. Upon that rock did I resolve to end my life. Fair Nisa, forgive him thy change that for himself provided a harder chance.
Shall I yield to him that made so small account of my beauty that he studied how he might never behold it again?
Fair lady, in the rose did I always behold thy colour, and resolved by continual gazing to perish, which I could not do when thou wast in thine own shape. Thou wast so coy and swift in flying from me.
Shall I yield to him that caused me to have wings, that I might fly further from him?
Sweet Niobe, the farther you did seem to be from me, the nearer was I to my death, which, to make it more speedy, wished the wings to fly into the air, and myself lead on my heels to sink into the sea.
Well, my good nymphs, yield. Let Ceres entreat you, yield.
I am content, so as Ramis, when he finds me cold in love or hard in belief, he attribute it to his own folly, in that I retain some nature of the rock he changed me into.
Oh, my sweet Nisa, be what thou wilt, and let all thy imperfections be excused by me, so thou but say thou lovest me.
I do.
Happy Ramis!
I consent, so as Montanus, when in the midst of his sweet delight shall find some bitter overthwart, impute it to his folly, in that he suffered me to be a rose that has prickles with her pleasantness, as he is like to have with my love's shrewdness.
Let me bleed every minute with the prickles of the rose, so that I may enjoy but 1 hour the savour. Love, fair Celia, and at thy pleasure comfort and confound.
I do.
Fortunate Montanus.
I yielded first in mind, though it be my course last to speak. But if Silvestris find me not ever at home, let him curse himself that gave me wings to fly abroad, whose feathers if his jealousy shall break, my policy shall rip. Non custodit, nivellet, ulla potest.
My sweet Niobe, fly whither thou wilt all day, so I may find thee my nest at night. I will love thee and beloved thee. Sit modo non fecis, dicere lingua memor.
I'm glad you are all agreed. Enjoy your loves and everyone his delight. Thou, Eriscthon, art restored of Ceres. All the lovers pleased by Cupid. She joyful, I honored. Now, ladies, I will make such unspotted love among you that there shall be no suspicion nor jar, no unkindness nor jealousy. But let all ladies hereafter heed that they resist not love, which worketh wonders.
I will charm my nymphs, as they shall be neither so stately as not to stoop to love, nor so light as presently to yield.
Here is none but is happy. But do not as Hippomenes did when by Venus' aid he won Atalanta, defile her temple with unchaste desires and forget to sacrifice vows. I will soar up into heaven to settle the loves of the gods that in earth have disposed the affections of men.
I to my harvest, whose corn is now come out of the blade into the ear, and let all this amorous troop to the temple of Venus, there to consummate what Cupid hath commanded.
And I, in the honor of Cupid and Ceres, will solemnize this feast within my house, and learn, if it be not too late, again to love. But you, foresters, were unkind that in all my maladies would not visit me.
Thou knowest, Eriscthon, that lovers visit none but their mistress.
Well, I will not take it unkindly, since all ends in kindness.
Let it be so. These lovers mind nothing what we say.
Yes, we attend on Ceres.
Well, do.
And thus ends the play. So the question we've been asking for much of the last two sessions is, how's it all going to end? And how do we feel about that ending? And I feel like I need to just give everyone a minute. I feel like everyone just needs to just take on board all of the play in this scene and where it's been pushing us, and thoughts thereof. Before I slowly, and I just kind of keep talking in this slow way, waiting for people to come around. So, thoughts from the room about the ending to the play, even if they're only half drawn thoughts. Where are we? Who wants to leap in? Lynn first.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's in terms of genre and audience expectations and so on, it's almost impossible not to have it end with the couples getting together. But it's, as a 21st century person, I find myself chafing a little. I mean, because there was this moment when we really start to question the convention, where Celia says, men look pale and swear, so we have to yield to that, even though we want to, as if our hearts were tied to their tongues. And this is, this is a really great insight, that the expectation is that the relationship between two people depends on how much the man loves and how sincere he is, rather than on what the woman wants or needs. Like if I love you enough, you kind of have to love me back. And this is, is pushing against that expectation a little bit, but then they just kind of give in. So I feel a little let down, but maybe that's me putting a much later kind of feminist spin on it, and maybe that's unfair.
There's nothing wrong with being unfair. If we're going to perform it today, we have to perform it in front of people today. Liza, then Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I was heartened by I was heartened by the amount of scorn and contempt that the nymphs had, and also intrigued by them suggesting that they were actually happier in their transformed forms. And because to be human is to have to put up with these guys. That also there's, the general early modern fallacy that, first of all, love makes a man, specifically a man, melancholy. And if you suffer enough, then eventually the woman is going to be okay with putting herself through the suffering of dating you. That it's sort of a balance, like a debit and credit thing, that if you put enough coins of suffering into the machine, eventually you get the fluffy toy of love. And I don't even know where this metaphor is going.
It's a good one, though. I think we should keep it. I think we should keep it for the future reference. Coins of suffering for the fluffy toy of content. Yeah, I'm liking it. Do you have more? No. Lois.
Yeah, well, I think what makes it work is partly that the women do speak so beautifully, both about how they were happier and the things they were changed into, and then why should I love somebody who's prepared to do this to me anyway? And then, I don't know, I was certainly trying to play Cupid as somebody who was trying to pretend that everything was ending just beautifully when it obviously wasn't. I mean, because it seems to me that it does have this still very ambivalent feeling at the end. I mean, everybody is feeling very, very mixed about what they're doing. Although I don't know, because those last lines do suggest that, the lovers aren't paying any attention to us, as if they are all embracing and finally discovering true love. So you could play it that way.
Yeah, it's like where we had with Endymion is, the sense of, and now we have all these horrible compromises and nobody is happy. There's no real sense from any of the nymphs that this is they are yielding to the enormous pressure that they are going to end up in terrible torment. At the end, this is being the idea that this is about love is clearly just seems to be spin. From Cupid. Yes, this is my job. I spread love. This is look at all the love I've spread around. I'm going, no, that's not that. Tamara, did I see a hand?
Yeah. I was gonna say I was like, can we just sort of cut the ending so we finish it with the girls turning back into their enchantments? But at the same time, bearing in mind that this is an early modern play, you could totally just do that. You could just have Cupid be the guy who's like, this is great, true love wins, and everybody's not happy, which is of course a bummer for an ending, but I feel like that could absolutely work, because there is literally no argument that happens other than the girls are under all this pressure that they have to. There is no logical argument. There is nothing. They just turn around and go, fine. Which,
yeah, and it's fine, isn't it? Those I do's aren't joyous I do's. It's just,
which makes sense for the time that the play was written in. You can definitely make a point of that if you were to produce it.
Yeah, it's something about Lyly leaving everyone slightly miserable at the end. I'm really liking this vibe in a certain way, but not necessarily in a good way. Sarah, then Helen.
Yeah, I think if I was going to stage this, the way I would probably do it, although I might change my mind later, but I think just on first thoughts, I would just be tempted to really play up the fact that actually the biggest douche in this play turns out to be Cupid. So you play that to the hilt. I mean, he does go on a journey because, at the beginning he's trying to do this kind of, I am so sage now, I am so wise. And so that's quite fun in itself for the actor playing Cupid. The fact that the further the play goes on, the more he reveals himself to actually, he's just a douche.
It's the Wizard of Oz.
it is. Pay no attention to that cherub behind the curtain.
You will all have love. I have the magical
exactly.
ability to make that happen.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Yeah. So you play that up. And then I think you do have him, like when he says, "Oh, I'm off now to sort out the God's love," and you actually do have him exit. And then you're left with this bunch of people who are either really unhappy, in the case of the nymphs, and in the case of the lovers, maybe beginning to come down off the high, because once Cupid goes and takes his kind of little love aura with him, they're perhaps beginning to realize, like, they've got themselves into a bargain too, and they now have to live with the consequences. And I think you can really play that up. And that last line of Ceres, I just think is genius. And actually, Helen, you just delivered that like so perfectly. It was wonderful, because that is not how you expect an early modern play to end. It's such a modern ending in a way. Well, do. The fact that that's the last line, I would be tempted to really play that up. The fact that you've got all these couples who are perhaps now slightly terrified of what they've just got themselves into, the guys as well as the women. And then, just because I'm a sentimentalist at heart, I would actually finish with maybe a bit of music or something, or a dumb show that actually brought Protea and Petulius back into the picture. Because what I actually love about this play is the contrast between the balance and the equanimity between the true lovers, and the absolute lack of balance and autonomy between what I'm calling the false lovers. So it's kind of, I think you could really highlight that contrast, end with this really big contrast between the kind of desolation of the people who have talked themselves into this, or been allowed to, have been forced into it, and then the couple who are actually genuinely in love and are actually, you kind of have the feeling that it's going to work out for them. So that might be quite a nice way of like heightening that contrast even more, and also leaving the audience on a happy note at the end.
Well, it's a really interesting point about, does Cupid leave? Because then, before the actual whole scene is over, because if Cupid leaves and no one's playing lip service to his presence, then that creates an interesting dynamic at the end there. I have so many alternate ways of ending this without changing a single line. One of which involves Nisa braining Ramis with a rock. Celia stabbing the Montanus, and I forget what the appropriate...
What Niobe does with the bird doesn't...
With the feathers, just strangles him with a feather boa. The moment Cupid leaves the room, and it's just going, we're all happy now. Look, we said we were going to do this. And that's and you've just we attend on Ceres. Well, do. And it becomes a bloody revenge tragedy. Helen.
Yeah, I mean, I was in that last scene, I was really struggling with Ceres' motivation, and trying not to channel all the women of my mother's generation who gave you good advice on how to manage a man. I mean, we're talking about the stuff they learnt from their mothers before the Second World War. And I felt that the only way you could deal with it is that she had made this deal because she felt she was incomplete without her train of nymphs. They were part of her family, part of her honor, part of her existence. She was Ceres, she had to have a train of nymphs, and their nymphs had been taken away, and she was all on her own, and she needed them back badly, and was prepared to make almost any compromise to get them back.
There's something really interesting about the sort of political compromises going on in this scene. The Ceres isn't really fighting for this because she believes in it, but because it's the only way to resolve the situation, perhaps.
And she's given her word too, that she can command her nymph's affections.
Lynn,
and then discover she can't.
Lynn, Sarah, and then Tamara.
Yeah, that's that's I think a really useful sort of character thought that Helen just had. What I was thinking was more kind of thematic. That it's maybe significant that the goddess is Ceres, the goddess of the harvest and of plenty and abundance, rather than something else, because maybe deeply buried in this, or very subtly hinted, is that the world must be peopled.
I want grandchildren.
Yeah, there you go. I want grandchildren. That eventually somebody's got to pair off and have children in order for the human species to continue, and those arrangements are not always super satisfactory. So maybe the fact that this is Ceres rather than Diana or something, Ceres had to give up her daughter half the year in order for the underworld to have a queen. That's a painful compromise when you think about it. So, I mean, I think it's really interesting to think about this play in contrast with something like Campaspe, where the incredibly desirable woman chooses the ordinary tradesman to spend her life with rather than be the concubine of a conqueror, and people have their social roles, which it's better for society maybe than the individual, but politics is the art of the possible.
Whoa, you quoted Evita and the Duckman. I bow to such expertise.
Sarah, then Tamara.
Yeah, just picking up partly on what Lynn said, but also on what Helen said. I think that the thing is, there's more than one type of love, isn't there? And this play is Love's Metamorphosis, and we do get different types of love in this play. And I think one type of love we see, which Helen touched on, and which I feel you could really play up in this production, is maternal love. Because maybe she wants grandchildren, and maybe she wants her train and all the rest of it, but I think on some level she genuinely loves these girls. And she wants them, and that was absolutely the way you played it, Helen. And I found Celia really moving in that, not Celia, Ceres really moving in that last scene because of the way you played her. And this thing of like, she knows, she's not at all enthusiastic all the way through this scene, but she knows what is going to happen. And the other thing I find really interesting is that after the girls have said, you know what, just turn us back, it's fine, she does not say anything then. Ceres does not step in there and say, no, you must do as you're told. She doesn't. And I can imagine, there is certainly a way of playing Ceres in that moment that you can see she's quietly proud of them there. And it's only once Cupid has just stepped in and done his really douchiest speech where he's like, you know what, I'm not actually going to turn you back into what you want to be. I'm going to turn you into loathsome monsters. And he kind of just sinks even lower. It's only then that she steps in and she says, my sweet nymphs, for the honour of your sex, for the love of Ceres, for regard of your own country, yield to love, yield my sweet limbs to sweet love. That, I think, is just her desperate to try to save the situation. And you could play that with real, genuine authenticity and love, because she knows that these girls are just going to, be destroyed effectively if they don't yield. And so I think you could really play up that relationship, that whole and bring up that maternal love. And then you've got the genuine love between the lovers. You've got the love, you've got the duty, the doing the thing that is for the greater good. You could play up with all those different types of love. So by the end of the play, you see that the kind of the incel version of love is actually the most, that is like the most kind of, it's not real love, but also it's kind of the most kind of pathetic and weak version there is, and it brings absolutely nothing but kind of discontent and disappointment. So I think there's ways of playing with the different types of love in this play.
Ceres is really dealt a terrible hand. I mean, she comes on over a corpse. I mean, it's basically this act of terror has sort of occurred, and everything is suddenly just going downhill fast, and it's just trying to scramble the worst solution. There is no winning hand. I think that Ceres is dealt. She plays the hand she's got. Tamara.
I was going to say something else, but I wanted to pick up on Ceres because in mythology, that's Demeter, right? So that is, her story is that of a mother losing a child. So already there is, and also she's the goddess of harvest, the goddess of earth. There's this earth goddess, mother goddess thing that's going on with that. So I love the idea of a mother trying to save her children and doing everything she can. I think that makes so much sense of all the dialogue and all she's willing to do, and how when we had that scene with Cupid and we all said she's quick to yield. Well, a mother would. And so I love that thought. I also kind of love the idea that if you do this as a production, there could be a sense of a generational thing of like Helen brought up how just older generations of women were just taught this is just how it works. So this is how you manage your man. This is what you do. Whereas younger women tend to not take any crap anymore, hopefully. Hopefully. But also what I wanted to say, while I love Robert's idea with the killing stuff, because I'm always for the blood and gore and the violence, I had this image that was, and I for some reason I've got Julia Roberts in my head, but basically I have the idea of what if it's a dumb show, if it's Protea's wedding and all the others are bridesmaids and bridegrooms, and she throws the flowers and it just falls flat on the stage because nobody wants to catch it.
Yeah, I've got other endings as well. I just want to change the I do's to just no. Cupid just his face turns red and explodes, and the nuclear explosion just occurs, and just as his entitlement just gets so nuclear.
Rob,
that's another thought. I do have serious thoughts as well. I should point out I am just.
You just said the word nuclear
Liza.
on YouTube forever.
Did. Nuclear.
Twice.
And Eric.
Yeah, no, I'm about to save the situation. Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say that it's interesting because we kept mentioning Galatea and stuff. And this is like the anti-Galatea. It's kind of basically the lovers, sort of, the male lovers get what they want, as they did in Endymion. But they kind of, like, there's this sort of underlying violence throughout. Whereas in Galatea, you just kind of, I mean, you've got the sort of, Diana and her nymphs being basically not handled in the best way possible, to put it lightly. But it's kind of like there is a happy ending. Like you get sort of Galatea and I don't know, am I like sort of going to have to flag this up for spoilers or something? You get Galatea and I can't remember her name. Phillida together, which is kind of a good ending compared to other things. And Cupid gets tied up and thrown in a bag. But this one, it's the complete other end of that, where he triumphs kind of, but he doesn't in some ways.
No, he does. He does. Sorry. It's a win for Cupid, I'm afraid.
it kind of is.
I'm hearing lots of erring on that one.
It kind of is, but I think you could, if you extended the end of the play and you put in a dumb show or a dance or something, and you use some of these wonderful ideas that are coming up, I think there are ways of making it not a win.
Well, the thing is, Cupid gets his way. That doesn't mean that.
Doesn't mean he wins.
He's successful.
Yeah, exactly.
In that sense, I don't see that anyone is in love.
Apart
he's paired people off.
Apart from we mustn't forget about Protea and Petulius, and I think this is the thing. It's good to bring them. It would be good to bring them back at the end, because actually they are the Galatea and Philida of this play. But their kind of love is not so striking because they don't finish the play. They don't have the dialogue at the end, and also probably because they're not a same-sex couple, because they're a more conventional couple, we perhaps forget about them. And I think it would be really good to bring them back and remind everybody that, yes, actually, not everybody gets the happy ending, but these two do.
Other thoughts? I'm sort of winding down the room. I'm not going to go round through everybody. I'm going to let people dive in as they want. We've had a fairly good general thing on the end specifically, but also the play overall. If there's other thoughts that anyone wants to throw into that mix as we go round. Liza, then Tamara, then Alan.
I was just thinking of when we were discussing who wins, as it were. I was thinking of the Wife of Bath's tale, where the fellow has to answer the question, what does a woman really want? And it turns out to be her own way. So this play being set in an age where marriage was more or less an obligation, and you might have a choice in it, or you might not, or you might have a bit of a choice, but not the choice you wanted. I think it's significant that the women say, fine, we'll marry you, but we reserve the right to behave as we like. That, you changed us into a rock and a flower and a bird, and so we're going to partake of those natures now, whether you like it or not. If you want a relationship with us, this is what you get. So I do like that. Yeah, yes, I join the rest of the room in feeling the kind of forced marriage a little disappointing, but that was the lived reality of many people at the time, and within that, these women managed to preserve a measure of autonomy, which I respect.
Tamara.
Well, following on from that, and of course the fact that at least for me, Galatea was such an amazing ending that I wasn't expecting. I just love Lyly. I just think he's such a good writer, and I'm so annoyed that he just sort of tends to disappear because of Duckman. Anyway, that I'm fine. I'm good. I'm cool. I'm good.
I'm now seeing the more disturbing Caped Crusader that frankly most of the people in the audience have no idea what we're talking about, and we can't explain on camera, so that's fine. Alan, then Aliki.
I must admit, I'm still coming back to the question I posed yesterday, which we didn't really answer, which is, what audience was Lyly working to? Because I must admit, this play didn't actually go anywhere for me. I suppose partly because it's got elements of rom-com, which is a genre I've never really understood or enjoyed. And I just don't really see who this was aimed at.
I'm not sure what you mean by that question. I mean, there is an audience for this kind of theatre, this kind of storytelling, this kind of mood. I mean, I've constantly talked about the way that Lyly plays with tone and the atmosphere in a room. It's there is an audience for this. If you could define more what you mean by the question.
I just don't. I don't see it having a major audience. I'm seeing references coming up in the chat to assorted TV series programs which I've never seen, and I would not go to look at anyway. But it just, as a piece, it just didn't really do anything for me. There's a lot of very clever verbal stuff, and you can see a lot of spectacle if it was staged right. But beyond that, you know, it seems like an awful lot of noise without actually achieving anything.
I think the word that's just come up is the psychology of what's going on here. I mean, between all of the Lyly plays, we're getting a spectrum of playing around with themes and ideas. And these are very much idea plays. So perhaps the modern equivalent might have been some of the kind of material we'd see at the Royal Court or in one of the smaller spaces. There's definitely a market that does similar kinds of things, if not exactly in this style today, of which there is a live and living presence, not as I say in this form, but in the sense that playing with ideas, playing with emotions and ideas is something that does actually have its presence today. Aliki, then Lois.
I just want to say I share everybody's or the various expressions of disappointment with the ending of the play, but I cannot forget that he gave Celia that magnificent line that Lynn quoted, and I'm going to quote a little bit again just because I like to hear it. If men look pale and swear and sigh, then forsooth women must yield because men say they love. And I love it. I love it that a woman said that on stage then, and I just kind of want to live with that for a bit.
Yes, I think when we're talking about the what we want from an ending is, of course, there is a sense of the question of is drama supposed to present us with the world we want to see, or is this the kind of ending that the world would have presented? Is this the reality for a lot of people, however unpleasant it might be? And does the play criticize that? I think the play is putting up in the air all of these questions and issues, and the discussion in the bar afterwards, one hopes, is going to be along this kind of level if the production is well structured. And of course, we can always add material in terms of dumb show and the way we stage that final scene. I agree. You always hope for egalitarian, but the spectrum of what Lyly is doing across his career is really interesting. He's really playing with these ideas. Lois, then Sarah.
I mean, by all accounts, Queen Elizabeth was particularly fond of the child actors, and one gets the impression that women did particularly like them. I mean, these little miniatures performing, and critics sometimes say it's because they're not sexually threatening. I don't know. At any rate, it feels to me like a play written with a largely female audience in mind, and women obviously do like it. I mean, we like it, partly because, so it ends up with everybody getting married, but all these things are said, which are not normally said in plays at all. It's really quite remarkable, I think.
We just don't get this dialogue anywhere else, or we haven't, very occasionally, but when in this amount, this number of female characters as well within a play, which boy companies can do in a much more fluid way. Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on you said not all the plays are egalitarian. Well, Galatea isn't egalitarian in that sense of the word, in a way, because although there is this amazing ending, it's not unproblematic. And like the nymphs. You don't want to be a nymph in a Lyly play, do you? Because it's like he this thing of compromise. Even in Galatea there is compromise. So it's like this is obviously something he's interested in exploring, and I don't think in a way the ending is as important as the overall kind of vibe of the play. I'm not explaining myself very well, because obviously the ending is part of the play, and the ending is going to affect how the audience feel about the resolution of the story. But I feel that there are ways kind of to play with that, that we've talked about, and actually the overall vibe of the play is one that is very pro women, pro agency, and pro sort of genuine love, sort of like love that is actually based on not just on like teenage boys lusting after nymphs, but on something that is real and genuine and equal. And so in a way, I think I quite often feel with Lyly that the outcomes of his plays are actually not as important as the overall tone that you get from them. And there are ways of dealing with the endings, or not dealing with the endings, but interpreting the endings that are actually would work for a modern audience. And the compromises and the problems that you get, even in a play like Galatea, are actually all part of that. They're part of the satisfaction of it, because, as you say, it is going to provoke conversation in the bar afterwards.
I like the fact that Lyly is brave enough to leave us with plays that are so sort of compromised at the end, that nobody is you don't get absolute happy endings for anyone. You do have some characters in this who end with who seem to be in a perfectly stable, loving relationship. And just seem to be in a relatively, barring Neptune, are actually in a perfectly normal relationship. They're not. There's no extremity being presented. Whereas everybody else, there's this constant lack of satisfaction at the end. I mean, Sappho and Pheo ends particularly grimly for pretty much everybody. Galatea is left on a certain suspension of actually the ending. We don't quite know how it's finally going to resolve itself. Who's going to end up being what and why, and is that going to be fully resolved? So I think that's very modern. I think that's the most modern thing about this, is that it doesn't necessarily give you everything in the way that a lot of other plays, wrap up in a very, very and now la 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 da da kind of way. That's my technical term there for how to close a play. Other thoughts, because I've just talked for a long time there. Eric.
I was going to say that it was, I think, sort of, while we've talked about the violence of it, we've talked about the sort of cringy characters of it and stuff, but also we haven't talked about like the solidarity, because when the girls were talking, we're saying, I will not yield, the chat exploded with do not yield. You can just imagine like sort of modern women in an audience nowadays going sort of, do not yield, please don't hang on to your independence or whatever it is.
You want the audience to storm the stage and just carry Cupid away before the play ends.
Yeah, totally. But it's just like there is this sort of solidarity between them in a way, although they don't express it directly.
I mean, that pivot in that final scene of don't yield is really gripping. And this play is really gripping, and it's a mistake to think of this play, because it's witty and seems so light, is that this is a comedy. This isn't a comedy. It's got some funny material. What genre are we talking about? And we're a bit obsessed with genre today. But this play is doing all sorts of things. Any other thoughts before I close the session? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, we have 3 more plays by John Lyly to go. We're almost at the end. We probably won't return to Lyly next week, but sometime in the week after or beyond, we will come to another play. Which one? I don't know. I will spin the magical wheel of fortune and see what play by Lyly will come out. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful performances. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.